early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
It's still your favorite program, Early Exchange, where we shape policy. We're always proud to say that, so that that message will sink and then it can be part of our programming. Today, we're reviewing the Sustainable Development Goals, about 17 of them. But specifically, we'll be looking at goal number 8 that talks about decent work environment and also sustainable economic growth. There are 3 dimensions to it. We'll talk about, unemployment, we'll talk about decent work environment, and also what it takes to have sustainable economic growth. These are goals set by the United Nations to ensure that the world experiences prosperity with a target set for the year 2030. But the question is, how would we assess the level of commitment to these goals? How are nations fulfilling the obligations expected in order to be able to achieve these goals set for the year 2030? Now, let's begin our business of shaping policy for today by bringing in our guest analyst. We're being joined by Dr. Femi Egbesola, who joins us virtually. He is the President, Association of Small Business Owners in Nigeria. Dr. Egbesola, glad to have you join us this morning. Good to see you again.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity. Good to see you too.
It's always delightful having you here to talk about serious issues like this. So let's start the conversation by you giving us a picture before we go to the specifics of SDG goal number 8. Let's start with a general overview of the Sustainable Development Goals, and I would like to have your take on the spirit of these goals created by the United Nations in 2015, about 17 of them, to ensure that the world becomes a better place by the year 2030. But I would like you to do an assessment of the spirit behind these goals and the commitment of nations towards achieving these goals, given the fact that the United Nations has set a target of the target by 2030. How will you assess the level of commitment of nations to these obligations?
The world leaders in their wisdom saw need to come together and have a common goal to salvage our world. They have come to understand that the way we are operating in silos with our different targets and goals will not get us the best globally. And that's why they decided in 2015 to come together to sign that pact that brings about the 17 different goals that we as different economies are expected to work towards. Coming back home here in Nigeria, we have not done too well when it comes to achieving these goals. According to the last ranking, we are 43rd out of the 52 different countries, and that's not too good for us. It means that we have not been doing so well. In the States, particularly in West Africa here, Nigeria states ranked 15 out of 16, and that's also very, very bad. It means that we have not done much in achieving these development goals. And it is important for us as a nation to work towards achieving this, because that is what will guarantee good life, that is what will guarantee better environment, that is what will guarantee sustainable economies and good job and work environments. That is what will also guarantee equitable living, and at the same time to ensure that there is equality among all of us that are resident in different countries. It also challenged government that there's need for them to go beyond paying lip service to this sustainable development goals, but rather work on achieving them. You would ask me, is it too much for us to achieve the whole 17? To me, it is not. But particularly for me, I would rather prefer a country to focus on goal number 1 and goal number 8. And I'm happy that this discussion of today is dwelling more on goal number 8. It is starting from our spirit. The spirit we should have, the mindset we should have is a mindset of we can do. If you have that mindset that we as a nation can do it, we will definitely be able to do it. And it will start by government trying to institutionalize all of these. By the time it is institutionalized, by the time we have policies driving these goals, and not just at the federal level, but cascaded to the subnationals and even to the local government level, we will discover that we are going to be able to move up in the ranking, and Nigeria will be better for it locally and even globally.
All right, as you're aware, our obligation on this program is to shape policy. So I would like you to identify some of the challenges confronting, the commitment to these goals. As you've talked about earlier, you make reference to the case of Nigeria as regards the level of commitment to these goals. What are some of these setbacks or some of these issues contending with the commitment or the level of commitment that should be devoted to these goals?
Well, over time, we have discovered that most of our policies are not in tandem with our local realities. And that's why when many of our policies are faced for policy somersault, policy mismatch. And that's why there's need for review and reform of policies again and again. You will see that in the past few weeks, we have had so many policies that were retracted or reviewed or reformed. And that shows that there is something wrong with the policy making process and perhaps also with the policy makers. Starting with the SMEs, now that we are talking about goal number 8, which has to do with supporting the growth of the economy through the SMEs and perhaps creating good employment. Starting with the MSMEs, you discover that these MSMEs are the highest rate of employment in the country as today. We create 87% of 84% rather of all the job opportunities that are there. We also hold 96% of the businesses. It means that if the economy is going to grow, we must support these drivers of the economy. The MSMEs are the drivers of the economy, of the global world, and particularly also of our country. But you discover that our policies has not been actually supporting the MSMEs. And that's why their growth has been stunted over time. And that's why we discovered that in Nigeria particularly, businesses hardly survive 5 years of their existence. And you also discover that many of those businesses are not scaling up. See, those that are in the nano category being there for over the years, those are the micro, small category, being there over the years, rather than scaling up to become small from small to medium, medium to big, and big to large. That's a challenge. So government really needs to begin to also work on our educational curriculum. When it comes to achieving these goals, it has to start from our education and at the early stage. So government needs to begin to see how they can begin to include in our curriculum so that every child becomes aware that there is a goal that they are targeting and there's also a way for us to be able to achieve that goal. Government also needs to bring everybody on board to be able to tackle these. Everybody, starting from religious leaders, they have to be educated because many people are not even aware of this goal. There's need for awareness. So religious leaders needs to be part of it. Community leaders needs to be part of this. Even the media has a lot of role to play. Media houses needs to have deliberate strategy to be able to advocate for these SDG goals and be able to drive the initiative that will make it work. We also need to work more with international organizations, particularly the non-governmental international organizations, to be able to bring on board funding that will also help us to achieve some of these goals. Because one of the reasons why government has not been able to achieve this goal is the issue of funding. When you do not have enough funding, you begin to prioritize what area or particular sector you want to put your money into. And that's one of the reasons why the SDG goals is suffering so massively. You also see that in Nigeria here, corruption and partisan politics has also affected the growth of our SDG goals. Right people are not put in the right places to drive some of these policies. We do not have round peg in round holes. And that's also been called. And it is important for us to do this. You see the government today spending so much money on security and all of that, bringing military boys to the Sambisa forest, to other areas that we have banditry, terrorism, and kidnapping. If this SDG goals is promoted and driven to the level it should be, there will be no need for us to have military going after terrorism because this youth will be gainfully engaged and they will not need to go for terrorism, need to go for banditry or the so-called Yahoo and other vices that we have in our society. It's for our own long-term goal. If we can promote and drive these SDG goals. And it is important for government to institutionalize it, to move it away from the papers and make it something worthy and provide a clear way, clear channel, clear path that all citizens of the country need to tread to all of us, for all of us to achieve this goal together.
All right. Now let's get to the specifics of goal number 8. That goal is standing on a tripod. You have, on the other hand, decent work environment, decent work for all. The second one has to do with sustainable economic growth, and the last one has to do with employment. So let's start with decent work for all or decent environment. Now, globally, what should be the standard when you talk about decent work environment or achieving decent work for all? Knowing fully well in Africa, there are a large number of people who are unemployed. How is it is for them to prioritize having decent work and the emphasis on this? I would like you to give us a picture of the ideal when it comes to decent work environment or decent work for all, and what is available in our climate or in our society, given the fact that unemployment unemployment rate is very high. Give us that picture.
All right, decent work environment entails that first, there should be equal opportunities for all of those who are looking for work, be it that you are a woman or women, be it that you are disabled or you have some form of disability, or be it that you are a youth or you are a new school leaver. You should have equal opportunities. Decent environment also goes to the point that when you now get the job, you should be able to work under certain standards that befit humans. And one of such standards is certain hour of work. You do not need to work at times from 7 o'clock in the morning to 7 in the evening that we have in some part of the world, including Nigeria here. There are set targets for hours of work you should work so that you will not become overstressed and your productivity will be highly achieved. That decent work environment also means that you must have some incentive that you are going to work with that will guarantee you some form of soft landing where there are issues. One of such is for you to have health management support system that when you are sick or when you have issues at your workplace, you already know that there is an agency working with your organization that will take care of all of that. It also means that you should be able to go on vacation when there's need for you to go on vacation. It also means that there is need for you to have other incentives to motivate you. One of such incentives is for organization to be able to increase your pay as at when due. When we have economic challenges and your salary or your emolument is already challenged, the organization you are working with should be able to pay you in tandem with what the economic dictates at that point in time. Decent environment also means that you should not have any threats at your place of work, particularly those of the other gender that have been threatened by the male counterpart. That also is an indicator of a decent environment. And when there are issues, there should also be a form of alternative dispute resolution mechanism in your place of work. If you have issues, it should not be that when the boss goes right, he's always right. And even when it goes wrong, he is also seen to be right. There must be a way of reporting issues at your place of work. There must be a mechanism to address those challenges when they are reported. And there must be deterrence for those who break the laws. There must always be borders when you are at your place of work.
All right, interesting. I like your submissions, which is why you are the right man for this conversation. You're wearing 3 caps. You are an employer, the president of a national association, and entrepreneur. Now, given the fact that most business owners are going through hard times, given the economic realities, now, how is it is for employers to provide decent work environment? How challenging it is now, the moment, given the indices as regards the performance of the economy, and also given the fact that you don't have likely access to funds to provide this kind of incentives. Talk to us. What are the challenges being faced by employers as regards the commitment to providing decent work or decent work environment, and how can that be managed?
Starting from the lowest on the ladder, then that's the nano, micro, small, and sometimes medium-sized businesses. It's been a very big challenge for us to provide decent work environment. And the reason is that the financial capacity is not there. Most of the businesses we have around are still struggling, particularly with the economic challenges we have here in the country at the moment. And when you do not make enough profit, it is difficult for you to provide all that you need to do in your work area, particularly when it comes to decent work environment. And for that reason, I would say that we rank so low, the MSMEs rank so low in providing a very good work decent environment. And then it's also an indication that government has not been able to incentivize that sector well enough. I did mention the other time these MSMEs are the drivers of the economy. And when we do not really work towards supporting them, growing them so that they can scale, it will be difficult for them to fulfill some of their obligations, which one of it is providing decent work environment. So we need to begin to look at the root of the matter. Most times our policies deal with the consequences and not the root. We need to begin to look at the root of the matter such that we begin to look at how we can actually grow this sector so that those players, those actors in that sector can provide the necessary services, can provide the necessary obligations that is supposed to be their responsibility. And then moving forward to larger companies, you also discover that some of them too are not doing too well when it comes to providing decent work environment, particularly those large companies owned by the Asians that are now working or having their factories here in Nigeria. You discover that most times you go to the work in the morning and in the afternoon, you are chased out of the factory without any procedure of termination of appointment. You discover that when you have issues where perhaps accidents at your workplace, you are discarded without any compensation paid to you. You discover that when you go to work in the morning, they put you under stressful, dehumanizing condition in their factories, and that's not good enough. And it's also shown that government is not also doing enough to monitor some of these implementation of the SDG goals. You should expect that there should be an arm of government that will be responsible for going around to see if the companies are living up to the minimum standard of the SDGs goal. If they cannot achieve the medium or maximum standard, they should be able to achieve the minimum standards. And that's the only way to go. So if we leave it free for all, everybody does it the way he or she wants, we will find it difficult to achieve this goal. And one of the areas that government needs to work on achieving this is by engaging the local governments. Government cannot at the federal level come and monitor every activity taking place in the big space of Nigeria. Local government at different levels should be engaged to tell them where to go, how to go about it, to ensure that there are certain compliance with some of these SDG goals. They should be able to also form a structure that will be able to help them to achieve this. If I know that inspectors will come to my place of work or my factory or my office to come and see if I'm conforming with certain basic standards, I will be able to up my game. But when I know it's a free-for-all, nobody's coming, it will always continue to be what it is, or perhaps degenerate works. And that explains our ranking, like I did mention the other time, that we are doing too badly on the SDG goal achievement rates.
All right, we're still looking at the first part of the tripod. Before we get to the issue of employment, I still have a few questions as regards decent work environment. Now, let's identify what should be the role of critical stakeholders like that of the Nigeria Labour Congress, talking about Nigeria, or specifically, let's talk about the labor movement in addressing the issue of having decent work for all. So what will be their role? And also, what are obligations expected of employees? We've talked about that of employers. So let's also talk about the role of the labor movement and that of employees in getting decent work for all. Your take, please.
Yes, ordinarily, the Labour Congress, whether it is Nigeria Labour Congress or any other Labour Congress in any part of it, is expected to see to the well-being and welfare of the workers in that particular economy. And one of the ways to do so is to ensure that there is a monitoring mechanism in place to see what is going on in different organizations that their members are. And at the same time, there should be a line of reportage if there are issues or concerns discovered in some of these places of a work environment. But unfortunately, particularly here in Nigeria, little or nothing has been done as to that regard. We discovered that so many things are going too bad in different work environments, and there's nobody reporting it. And even when it is reported, nobody is doing anything. That should be part of the responsibility of the Nigerian Labour Congress or Labour Force. And if you look at it again, you will discover that the Labour Congress may also be handicapped in the sense that when there are issues reported to them and they try to take it up to the national level, there is little or nothing done by government to support them to ensure that there are correction to these malaise. We, the NLC, can only try to ensure that they live to their responsibilities sometimes, but they are not in the position to make policies. They are not in the position to enforce law. They are not in the position to also bring out punitive measures that will discourage others from going the bad way. So government also needs to begin to look at how to bring about policies and laws that protect the average worker in the country. If we have these policies in place, if we have these laws in place, and they are effective, then you discover that the Labour Congress will be able to do more than they are doing. If you also have a good justice system that are able to ensure prompt the decision when it comes to work matters, you will discover that we will be able to also get it right. But when you take labor matters to the industrial court and you are there, you are already aggrieved, you have lost your job sometimes, you do not have enough income, and you have to go to that court and spend 2 months, 2 years or more pursuing a particular case with a company or an organization, ordinarily you will tire out along the way. So the labor force really needs to do. But government also needs to strengthen the labor force by ensuring that labor laws are strictly adhered to, are reviewed from time to time, and are made to be in tandem with the local needs of our economy, not what exactly we have in other climes that are more advanced than us. And then going further, we will also need to begin to look at those organizations that are not also being covered by the labor laws and the Labor Congress. We have a lot of organizations that are not under labor in Nigeria. And government should also find a way to begin to bring all these people, all these organizations, all these businesses that are not under labor to be able to also practice some sense of sustaining these SDG goals. If it is not done, you will discover that we will not be able to get it right, because I must tell you, organizations that are under labor are about just 4% of the total businesses we have in Nigeria. So if the Labour Congress is catering for 4% of the total businesses, it means that that number is minute. It means that more needs to be done by government to be able to sustain that. Another thing that's my personal perspective, that I have also discovered most times, is that when it comes to labor issues, personal interest, partisan politics, corruption, and all of that comes into play here in this part of the world, such that we begin to pursue different goals aside of the common goals of the worker. And that's also telling on the work environment. When you see organizations that are not doing it right, and we see labor officials moving in there and they are being offered one or two things and everything goes down, you begin to wonder, is there any justice in the system? If you also want to engage with government as Labor Congress, and at the end of the exercise, you just see that your yearnings, your requests died down without being achieved, you begin to wonder what has happened along the line. And these are some of the challenges we have in this factor.
All right. Now, let's address the issue of unemployment or unemployability. Globally, it has been an issue for concern. The figure released, or an estimated figure of about 200 million people who are unemployed globally, or over 200 million people globally that are unemployed. But when you look at the case of Nigeria, the unemployment rate is at about or over 43%. Now, give us an idea of what has led to this decline when it comes to issue of unemployment, and how is Nigeria catching up with tackling the issue of unemployment? You have monies being devoted for several programs which are meant to tackle the issue of unemployment. But as we speak, given the statistics, the figure is soaring. Give us a picture of what is going on.
Yes, as you rightly said, Nigeria is one of the capital of poverty in the world with that ranking, and that's not too good for us. And it shows that one of the reasons why we are poor is that most of us are neither employed or underemployed, and that's not a picture that we should have for decades. It's been on like that for decades, and it is also getting worse. When you have high rate of unemployment, means that perhaps even your youth are even unemployable, or those that are supposed to employ them are not doing well enough to be able to employ. It's a two-way thing. So starting from the employees that are supposed to be employed, you discover that many of the set skills that are needed by some of these organizations are not available even in our institutions. And the government now needs to begin to look at how they can begin to work more on our vocational centers and make it a must as part of the curriculum of particularly the secondary school leavers and even the university students, such that when you come out of school, you should have relevant skills that are relevant in today's world and that are needed by today's companies so that you can fit in. And if you do not get a job, it will be easier for you to begin to start your own business because you already have some set skills that are important and profitable to use at the current time in the country. We also need to begin to look at how to encourage our students from the normal norm of read to pass to read to do, read to get self-engagement. Time has come where we just must be paying particular attention on just the grades and you passing the exams. We must begin to teach them, train their mindset to embrace entrepreneurship as far as even the primary school education from down to the secondary and then the tertiary institution. That should be encouraged and be made compulsory in our curriculum. We also need to begin to look at how to make funding available to some of these youth that want to engage in entrepreneurship. If I have a skill set, if I want to engage in entrepreneurship, and I do not have access to finance or funding, it will become a tall dream that I may not be able to achieve at the end of the exercise. The government also needs to begin to open up access to funding, particularly for startups, so that they can start businesses, engage themselves by employing themselves, and over time begin to also employ others. We also need to begin to look at how governments can also send particular professional technical skills to different sectors. For example, the farming sector. You discover that many of our farmers today are not working with technology, and that's why their yield are low, and it becomes discouraging for them to go into farming. You also see that most farmers also do not have mechanized tools to work with. Government needs to begin to look at how to provide certain technology and equipment for different sectors of the economy. If you do that, you will discover that many of our youth today would like to engage in different work that may not be available in the 9-to-5 job or white-collar job. You will discover that they will be ready to go to farm because, one, the tools are there, the right technology to produce 5 times, 10 times the normal output is there, and there are certain security provided for them. We also need to begin to look at how government can begin to provide alternative work for people. Alternative work in the sense that government does not have the job of employing people. It is the SMEs that can employ people. So if you want to provide alternative work for people, you must grow that sector and collaborate with the stakeholders in that sector to know what they need, their challenges, and how to mitigate those challenges so that they can grow. For the youth too, they need to begin to know that life does not start in a day and end in a day. They must begin to also embrace that mindset that you must work and work for time, allow your seed to germinate, to grow before you begin to reap. It's not an idea that I must begin to work today or engage in business today, and the next day I make my millions and I start buying cars or vehicles. We must have that mindset to work. And one of the ways we can have that mindset is building the capacity of this youth to know that life is not just a bed of roses. And it's not always green on the other side. The media also has a part to play in things. They need to have programs, educational programs that can continue to change the mindset of our youth to know that there's need for us to work, there's need for us to engage in business, but it takes time for it to grow. We also need to begin to look at building clusters, business clusters that can engage business owners who do not have the capacity to rent a place to or run their businesses, whether it is a production manufacturing business or even a trading business or even artisans. Government must build clusters for them. When these clusters are built over time in different areas, particularly in all the local governments, you will see that many more youth, many more women will come down to engage in entrepreneurship, start their own business, and they will be able to employ people. If we have 50 million Nigerians here today in business, and each of them are able to employ just two persons, that makes 150 million in the workforce, and that's a lot of number, and that's the way for us to go.
There was a statement accredited to the former CBN governor where he talked about, make reference to cases of first-class graduates that are not employable. How do you react to this kind of statement, and how has it gone so bad? Now, I'll also want you to talk about the role of SMEs when it comes to job creation, because everything cannot be left for the government. That's your constituent. I also want you to talk about that.
From our own experience in engaging workers, we discovered that most of the graduates being shown out by the tertiary institution these days are unemployable. And that to that end, I would somehow agree with what the former CBN said. They are indeed, many of them, unemployable. You discover that even to write a good application letter is a challenge. You discover that when you employ them and you even try to train them, they do not perform well. Their productivity is low. And that's why you see most multinationals, when they employ our Nigerian counterparts, our Nigerian citizens, they go ahead to begin to train them for weeks and months before they are able to fit in. And that shouldn't have been the case. You also discover, too, that many of these other multinationals are bringing in expatriates from other countries, not because we do not have that skill here, but because we do not have people who are ready to practice that skill the way they should. And that's not too good for our economy. I think something needs to be done to rejig our educational system and our educational curriculum. Government needs to pay more particular attention to education. Today, you see secondary school leavers having 8, 9 credits in their WAHEC, and they cannot even speak good English because they were taught even in vernacular in their school. It is as bad as that. How can such people fit into the workforce and perform efficiently and effectively? That's the challenge we have in this part of the world. And I want government to see need to budget more and do more supervisory role in our educational system. We have a lot of private universities coming up that are doing far less than even some secondary schools. You see the list of unapproved universities that was released the other time, and you wonder how can over 500 unapproved universities be operating in our system, and we have to wait until years before we begin to say that they are unapproved. What kind of students or graduates do you expect them to shine out at the end of the exercise? So we have that a lot. And that's why you see we have MSMEs changing staff from time to time because they do not live up to our expectation. And we really want our youth to be employed because that's the only way we can bring down crime in the country. If we do not get them gainfully employed, crime will always be the order of the day. We will always continue to have banditry, terrorism, Yahoo, Japaism, and all of that. So it's important. For we, the MSMEs, like the statistics has shown, we employ 84% of the workforce. And that's to us a large number. 84% of the workforce employed by MSMEs are a large number. And it means we are doing well. But we can always do better. We can do better if government supports us. We can also do better if we are able to become more innovative about the way we ourselves do our business. Because definitely we have challenges in the economy, particularly economic challenges, but it's not only alien to us, it is also global. We have other countries too having different challenges here and there when it comes to the economy. But ours should also be an opportunity for us to be able to discover better ways of doing things, better ways of doing business so that we can grow and be able to employ more. Now, MSMEs needs to begin to look inward and think out of the box to be able to grow their businesses. We in our own association are already doing that. We are building the capacity of our members to be able to think out of the box, to become more innovative in their marketing so that they can sell more innovative in accessing finance. If you cannot get finance from the regular bank because of the high interest rate and all of that, you can join cooperative at your association level and get cheaper funds to work with. You're also encouraging exports. When you do export of your products, you discover that you're able to earn more because Nigeria is now competitive in the global market because of our weak naira. And that makes you be able to earn more money. When you earn more money, your business will grow and you'll be able to employ more people. We also look at how to begin to engage with a sister organization so that we can collaborate together and work together, and that helps us to grow. And when we grow, we also definitely will employ more people. When I talk of working together, it means that If I want to produce peanuts, for example, today, and I do not have the wherewithal to buy all the machineries and equipment, I can't work with somebody who already has a factory that is producing peanuts. Give him the specification of peanut I want to have, give to him or her my brand name, and that person produces it for me, and it becomes my product. And I'm able also to engage other people to work with me in marketing the product that has been produced for me by a sister company on contract basis. And with that, I'll also be able to scale up and be able to employ more people. It is important for MSMEs to grow. It is important for us to be also supported by government. It's also important for us to support ourselves and think of how best we can expand our businesses so that we can employ more. The way to go for us in Nigeria is to make sure that we take our youths off the road and make them employed, because they are about half of our population, and that's a large number. To take our women from the homes and make them gainfully employed, to also make sure that we have provision for those who have disabilities so that everybody can be gainfully employed. That's the way to go. That's the only way we can grow our economy. And that's the way we can have peaceful sleep at night, all of us, if we want a peaceful Nigeria.
Now, I like the fact that you've been playing in Nigerian space for a long period, so you understand that the common approach to tackling poverty or unemployment in Nigeria has to be the use of empowerment. And sometimes politics come into these, whereby certain individuals are targeted as against the general populace or the general society. What do you think is largely wrong with the template as regards empowerment in Nigeria? What are the challenges, and how can it be done better to ensure that it's actually targeted towards tackling poverty rather than just giving political relief to some people?
Well, to start with, one of the major challenges is timing. For example, let's talk about the recent one, the one promised by the president, tagged presidential palliative for SMEs and bigger businesses. This pronouncement was made last year, precisely around October last year, and the money was some of the money were dished out April this year. You can imagine what inflation will have done to 50,000 or 100,000 last year if they have had it immediately to when having it in April or so. The next is the number of targeted businesses. If you want to do empowerment program and you do for 1,000 people or 500,000 people in a population of MSMEs of 40 million, it is less than 1%. So it will most likely than not have the expected effect that it should have. The next again is the volume of the funding of palliatives. If you're giving out 50,000 naira as palliative to business owners, you begin to wonder, what will 50,000 naira do in an economy that a bag of rice is about 80,000 naira? What would 50,000 naira really do? So the volume of funding is another thing. Corruption is also another factor. You discover that most often than not, it is political business owners that get this funding, rather than the right business owners, the targeted business owners. An example is the 100 billion naira fertilizer intervention done for farmers. You see farmers coming up and say they have not seen even ordinary bag, not to talk of bag with fertilizer, and you begin to wonder, where did this fertilizer go? You also need, another issue is the issue of transparency. When you give out intervention programs to business owners, you should be transparent about it. Transparency would also mean that you have a platform where people can go to and check and see who are these beneficiaries, so that they can be sure that actually the fund or other form of palliative that you have done actually did happen, and it went to some verifiable people that one can place hands on. Another issue is not working with the stakeholders. If you do not work, if I want to do palliative or intervention program for shoemakers, for example, and I don't engage shoemakers, how do I begin to do the right palliative? I may think that what they need is money. They may say that what they need is not money, but a better working environment. So it's important for government to engage with different stakeholders in whichever area or sector they want to do intervention program. Another issue that always go wrong with our intervention program or palliative is that there is no evaluation, post-evaluation of what is done. If I give out 50,000 naira to 1 million nano businesses this time, I should be able to come back in the next 6 months and evaluate what was done without 50,000 naira. Was it impactful? If it was impactful, it means it's a way to go next time. If it is not, it means it's not a way to go. How can we begin to go around it and make it better so that it can be impactful the next time we do it? Such evaluation is not being done in this part of the world. And then when it comes to SMEs, if you ask them, they are disenfranchised. They no longer have the trust in government. They don't believe in government, such that when funding or palliatives are done, from that initial, they believe it will not work. And some of them don't even bother to apply. And those who wish to apply, you discover that the process is also equilibrium. It's very, very difficult. If you want to target nano business owners, you want to give them 50,000 naira. It means that those nanos should be traders, artisans, and those at the lowest ebb of the ladder of the pyramid. You now begin to tell them to go through a process of filling form. That they have to submit their CAC documents, they have to submit their tax clearance documents and all of that. Those people in that sector, how many of them have their businesses registered? So already you have delisted them from that program. You now discover that it's those that don't need that money that will begin to apply, because those are the ones that have those documentation and requirements that are expected to access the funding. You also discover that government does not also work most times with private banking institutions that have some knowledge about the MSMEs. They route it through some other government institutions that do not already have better understanding of the MSME sector. And for that reason, it is not done the right way. And that's some of the challenges we have. And for us as business membership organizations, we continue to tell government that for you to get it right with your policies, with your intervention or palliatives, you must have a stronger handshake with us. We must sit down at the round table to talk about what we want, how we want it, when we want it. And that's the only way you can get it right. You also must work with us to be able to provide the real business owners that are in need of this funding, because we have the data that we work with. And at the same time, too, you must engage us to be able to do monitoring and evaluation of those funding, particularly when those funding, some of them have to be repaid. We should be able to work with you to ensure that those funding are used for the right purpose and are repaid at when due. These are some of the things that we do in our association and also in other business membership organizations.
Wrap up, I would like us to talk about the third leg of the tripod, which has to do with sustainable economic growth. Let's start with the target as stipulated by United Nations. The target in this regard is, I'm going to read it out to you. I would like to quote the United Nations so that you react to it. The first one is to sustain per capita economic growth in accordance with national circumstances, and in particular, at least 7% GDP growth per annum in least developed countries. Now, my question to you is, how do you think Nigeria can achieve this per capita economic growth given the circumstances that Nigeria has found itself? Because this target is talking about sustainable per capita economic growth in accordance with national circumstances. As someone who has been in that space, in the Nigerian space for years, you are aware of the circumstances business owners are in. But how can we sustain our per capita economic growth as a nation?
Yes, it's been more or less static. Our growth per capita has been more or less static. Even the GDP growth has also been more or less static. And that's an indication that something is wrong somewhere. One of the things that is wrong is that ease of business has not improved. The major contributor to the GDP are those in business. So if they are not contributing well enough, it means that ease of business has not improved. Government needs to begin to work on liberalizing ease of doing business. Government needs to begin to provide infrastructures that will encourage doing business. Government also needs to begin to look at their policies. Do we need to reform some? Do we need to renew some? Do we need to throw some away? These are also areas that government needs to begin to look at. Then again, when it comes to growing our per capita, you need to begin to also let the citizens know that they must be productive. We have so many lazy youths around going about in the morning, drinking alcohol, engaging in different betting and games in the morning. There must be some form of education to address that gap. That's a big gap that has to be addressed. When we do not have youth that are ready to work also, it works against the growth of our GDP and our per capita. That also needs to be addressed. Again, too, is the fact that government needs to begin to look at how to bring down their structure to the level that is closer to the people. It's not right for government to be working just at the federal level and the states are not supporting it. You discover that in the statistics we wrote out the other time, the states in Nigeria rank the last to Leo. Out of 16, we are ranking 15. That means the states are not doing well enough. States need to be brought to the table. They need to be more responsible. And if they need structure to work with, government at the federal level can create those structures for the or templates for the states to begin to work with. At the same time, too, you look at the major contributor of the economy. Who are the people that employ a large number of people, of workers at a time? You discover that there are these multinationals, and these multinationals are already leaving the shores of the country. Quite a number of them have left, some have downsized, some have divested, and all of that. Government also needs to begin to look at how to encourage these multinationals to stay in our country and be more productive. Their staying means that they will continue to keep their workforce and improve on that workforce. They will continue to transfer knowledge to the local because they come with a lot of knowledge and technology. They also continue to pay more taxes to government. That grows our GDP. And it means that government needs to sit down with them, look at their basic needs, provide solutions for them, and if possible, provide other intervention programs to make them stay. It makes no sense going around the world looking for investors to come to Nigeria when those that are in the country are leaving. That makes no practical sense. We also need to begin to look at the challenges that the MSMEs are facing. We have a number of them. Some of them are issues of finance, some of them are issues of infrastructure, some of them are issues of multiple taxes and all of that. Government needs to also begin to address some of these issues so that that sector can be activated, stimulated, and grow. If they grow, our per capita income will grow, our GDP will also grow. And it is important for that to happen. We also begin to look for, particularly government this time, for alternative source of funding. One way to get source for funding is to nip corruption. We're able to nip corruption, you will discover that the nation's funding will grow. It's unfortunate today that we are paying so much on debts as a nation. We are using the fund we're supposed to build our infrastructure, build our health system, build our education system, and all of that to repay debts. We can cut down on that by looking at how we can stop corruption or perhaps reduce corruption to the barest minimum. Government also need to begin to look at how they can downsize their expenditure. Government expenditure is too overbloated, and that's not good for us. We need to have a robust discussion as a nation on that area, how we can reduce to a minimum our expenditure as a nation so that we can have more fund for other critical areas of the economy. Government also needs to look at how to put technocrats in place. At the moment, I do not really agree that we have enough technocrats handling our fiscal policies. And that's why you see CBN taking a lot of that stride in policy making. It's against the government coming out with fiscal policies. And that is a question, is a need to question if government really has the technocrats that can do that. We have wonderful Nigerians in Nigeria and abroad that can be brought in to help us to refine our policies and make it be localized to our practical need in the country. One of such is the issue of the minimum wage. We have been talking about the minimum wage up and down, this and that. The minimum wage, when it becomes law, is what everybody should pay, whether you're an SME or you're a civil servant or all of that. But the question is, can the SMEs pay 60 or 62,000 naira? From my end, the answer is a big no, because most of us are challenged. So if it is not, we should begin to look at innovative ways of going about the minimum wage. One innovative way could be that there could be a particular minimum wage for those in government and another one for SMEs. I'm not talking of OPS in general. We have some large corporations that can pay for SMEs. Could be that we have a set of minimum wage for MSMEs. But we want to have one minimum wage across board. But we want to exempt the SMEs for some period of time, maybe some months or years, so that they can stabilize and begin to pay the new minimum wage. These are the discussions we should be having if we have enough technocrats in place. Because if you pass a bill of a minimum wage that is one for all, we discover that it will only be alive on paper, but will not be alive in reality. So as governments, as people in the country, as communities, as youth, women, and all of that, we must all put our hand on the table to make it work. Without that, no particular sector or harm can do it alone. Government cannot do it alone. The people cannot do it alone. The communities cannot do it alone. We must come together. And government is the only one that can unify us better. Government must provide a platform where we all can have a voice to talk about national matters and have a voice in the national policy and decision making. And as with that, we'll be able to hold those policies, those matters, those decisions together. We'll be able to grow those policies, decisions together. We'll be able to implement it together, and we'll be able to also monitor it together. And then with that, we'll get a collective result that we all want. And that will help to promote more of the SDG goals that we have. And if that is done, when we come to 2030, you will see us nearing a better rating, better than what we have at the moment. I'm not too sure that at the local government level or at the state government level, there are committees or boards that are in place to ensure strict compliance and adherence to these SDG goals. We are just talking about it at the national level. It should be cascaded to even the communities, even the educational sector, even the business communities. And that's what I want to recommend.
All right, let's wrap up our conversation with this question. Given the target set by the United Nations, which is the year 2030, this is 2024, we have 6 years to go. What do you make of the reality of achieving this goal by the year 2030? Is that realistic?
Well, from all factors available, it will be a miracle if we achieve it. Let me not say it is not achievable. I will say it will be a miracle if we are able to achieve it. Our ability to achieve it will mean that we have been able to achieve some before now that are verifiable. Our ability to achieve it will be that we have institutions in place that are able to drive us to achieving it, which is not really there. Our ability to achieve it will also mean that there are some structure that are able to ensure adherence to some of these policies that will help us to achieve this SDG goal, which is not really there. Our ability to achieve it will also mean that key active players are at different level of government working towards the same goal, which is also not there. Our ability to achieve it also means that we have the fund to also be able to achieve it. Funding at the moment is not too healthy. You can remember, we can wonder government thinking of going to the pension fund to borrow money. It means that we do not have enough fund. So some of these goals need funding to be able for you to achieve it. Achieving it also means that we must be able to bring everybody in this different strata of the economy on board, particularly the youth. Youth organizations are not really engaged well enough, and they are the major drivers of some of these SDG goals because they are the median age of our population. Our ability to also achieve this means that we also want to work with other nations that have done better than us in this SDG goal, begin to learn from them, begin to use some of their templates to work, and now localize those templates to what is applicable in our country. That's a lot of work that needs to be done, which we should have started with 5-10 years ago. But to me, at the moment, we are still going around one same circle.
All right, Dr. Femi Egbesola, always a pleasure and even thought-provoking having this kind of sensitive conversation with you on critical issues like this. We must thank you for your time and your thought. No doubt you're the right man for this kind of conversation. Thank you so much for your commitment and your patriotism.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity once again.
Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.